Hey Vegas, I'm Emily Connor Cooper, and welcome to Legends and Laughs, where laughter is always on the menu and the stories are bigger than life itself.
Now, I know a thing or two about show business. You could say it's in my blood. I was born and raised in Texas, found my way to New York City to study at NYU, and I landed a job as a producer with CBS, NBC, and Broadway. And well, life became a lot more interesting when I met Pat Cooper at the Friars Club. From the hustle and bustle of New York City to the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas, I've had the privilege of being surrounded by some of the funniest and most talented people in the world. And today, you'll hear from people who knew Pat, who Pat knew, and in ways you won't hear anywhere else.
So sit back and relax and get ready to hear some stories that'll make you laugh, cry, and maybe even scratch your head a little. This is Legends and Laughs, where the humor never stops and the legends never fade. Welcome to Legends and Laughs. I'm Emily Connor Cooper, and I have a very special guest today. He is a very talented fella. He's been a resident of Las Vegas for over 14 years, almost 15 now, but he's also one of the most talented impressionists and impersonators I've ever seen, particularly of Donald Trump. Today our guest is Mr. John Di Domenico.
Oh, hi. Hello. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
And let's just get it straight, because
Yes.
some people don't understand that the Di Domenico is not the letter D, right?
No, you know, I literally had this conversation yesterday. In Italy, the DI is of.
Right.
So
Like
I am, the Di Domenico means of Sunday morning. So that is what the of is. And a lot of people think the DI is a middle initial. It is not. I am John F. Di Domenico. Francisco, like my father, or Americanized, it's Francis. So it's so funny because that just came up the other day, like, oh, you put your middle initial in your name. I'm like, that's not my middle initial.
Di Domenico is just such an Italian name.
It's
like,
so
hello,
Italian.
right?
Yeah, it's so Italian.
So you were raised with an Italian family in Philadelphia, is that right?
Right. My father was Italian. My grandfather came over in 1908 and met his wife here, and she's a Coppola. Yeah, Coppola, you know, we love the pronunciation changes. But then my father was raised here, but they never learned Italian because there was a lot of not so much love for the Italians in the 20s. And, you know, my dad was born in 23. So my grandfather said to the whole family, everything America. So they never taught them Italian. But my Aunt Rita really picked it up. She did all the Italian dishes and the 7 fishes for Christmas. And
Which
did
is
the
so
Sundays.
wonderful.
It is. I feel kind of ripped off in a way that we didn't learn. And a lot of the neighbors spoke Italian. And it's just, you know, you feel a little cut off from your heritage, especially when I went to high school and we had so many Italians. And they all had some knowledge of the language. But I love the Italian culture. I love the arts and theater and design and so much. I think so much of who I am comes from the Italian side of my family. You know?
I've always been fascinated with it, but particularly the traditions. You know, the 7 fishes, but the grandmothers, the nonnas.
The nonnas, like the movie that's out right
I mean,
now.
but I've been hearing about the nonnas forever. Now, I'm everything but Italian.
Right.
Right? But, you know, I had a lot of influence from Pat. But I was fascinated with it, and it was just a very warm culture. And Pat's son is very Italian, and he, you know, Pat's mother kind of raised him.
Right.
But you moved to New York, is that right?
Yeah, I made my way up to New York. You know, I wanted to be, I came out of like the womb, like dancing and singing and doing voices.
Oh, like Sammy Davis Jr.?
Yeah, pretty much. And, you know, I grew up in a row home neighborhood, Ambler, Pennsylvania, which is still to this day a very predominantly Italian town. You know, and, you know, you and I spoke about this, but being a kid and watching Mike Douglas, who was in Philadelphia, not far from where I lived, and seeing Pat on the show, my dad loved Pat. He loved Pat because as Italians, there were so many great comedians, but there were so few Italian comedians.
They're all Jewish.
They're all Jewish, to the point where I'm a huge Marx Brothers fan. Loved Groucho, but Chico was doing an Italian. You had a Jewish guy doing an Italian because they all, the Italians were so similar to the Jews. I always
Right.
thought that was so funny. He adopted an Italian persona.
Right. So in the Borscht Belt, when Pat went up there to do shows, the Jewish community, because his name was Pat Cooper at first, didn't realize that he was Italian because he was, of course, Pasquale Caputo or
Yes.
Caputo, however you want to. But the traditions were the same, so they were able to embrace him, and they loved him. The Jewish community.
Oh,
up
yeah.
in the, and then of course also in the Poconos. So I understand you went to college in the Poconos,
Yes.
which is a trip. I love that.
I went to East Stroudsburg in the Poconos, and I performed years later when I was a professional performer. I performed in the Poconos, but it was pretty dead by the time I got there. A lot of the rooms were, it was kind of like trailing off. Now it's hot again. All those places are hot again.
Did you perform at the old Mount Airy?
I think it was the Mount Airy Lodge. And the funny thing was, so when I was doing stand-up in the 90s, and I was a headliner that night. I was really more of a featured comedian. It was a middle act, really strong middle act. But I got a headlining spot, and I told a friend, I'm playing The Room at Mount Airy, or whatever it was. And the person said, Death Room. And I said, what? He goes, Death Room. He goes, it's a horrible room. And that night when I got there, like the closest person was 25 feet from you. And any comedian will tell you, comedy is cool and intimate. I mean, I did a comedy club in Richmond, Virginia. They were literally at my feet, like right here. And like, that's what you want. You want that closeness. You want that connection to the audience. Because they want to be with you. They want to laugh. When the person's that far away, the whole row is that far away, and the guy messed up my name, which happens all the time. They didn't play my music, which I come out to and do a bit to. So my name was slaughtered. The music didn't play. It was just one of those, I did 45 minutes of material in 20 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you, I did go to the, so that's brutal. I mean, that's just,
Brutal.
that's a typical story
Yeah.
of comedians. But I'll tell you that I did go to the new Mount Airy, and they had a wonderful room that was very intimate. And after the comedians did their show, they would turn it into a little disco room. But it's beautiful there now.
Oh yeah, no. Like I was saying, all that stuff has come back. They put the money in, and all those rooms, all those lodges are beautiful.
So
People want to get out of the city.
So at what point did you come to Vegas?
I came 2011, and I was on the road about 25, 30 weeks a year, and it was February of 2011, and I did a week-long corporate show in San Diego, and San Diego. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I flew back, and we punched through the clouds at Newark, and it was raining. It was cold. It's so industrial at the Newark airport. And then you land, and everyone's
Elizabeth.
and everyone's got their hand out, and you go to get your car, and $1 million to get your car. And I was driving back into the city, and I was like, what am I doing here? And I said to my wife at the time, I said, why do we live here again? Because I was like, I could probably live anywhere. And she said, mainly family. I said, to hell with them. We're moving. So I looked around the country, looked at San Diego, incredibly expensive. I'm not a LA fan, just more because I love the beaches and all those places, but the way it's laid out, didn't want to be there. And then a friend of mine was doing wardrobe for all the Cirque shows. She said, did you consider Las Vegas? And I was like, excuse me, I'm a New York actor. I'm not coming to Las Vegas.
Nobody lives there.
No one lives there. It's all so phony. And she, then she slapped my face. And she said, when are you here next? I said, I have a trade show there. And she said, tack on a day and a half for me. Give me a full day and a day and a half you fly out. And she showed me around. I was like, oh, this is a real city. And I guess it's like anything. You wouldn't want to live in Times Square, and you don't want to live in Bourbon Street in New Orleans, or those main places. But when she got me out of the city and showed me around, I thought, actually this makes sense. I'm already here 5 times a year performing. The airport is right there, and I moved here. It was the best move I've ever made. Mm-hmm. The best move I've ever made. And you had Nelson Sardelli on here, and I got to meet him pretty early on when I moved in, and he folded me in. And I got to meet so many people through Nelson. He introduced me to people, had me at his parties. I got to meet Pat and you through Nelson. And he is emblematic of what Las Vegas is. It is this community, very tight community of all the performers. You lived in New York, and like in New York, it's like all the comedians are with the comedians, and all the actors are with the actors, and all the dancers are with the dancers. Here, everybody supports you. You have a show, everybody comes out. Something at the Italian American Club, everybody comes out. I've never lived in a place where you get so much support, so much love. Everybody gets it here. And we all want to help each other, and I love that. I really love that, and I'm sure you know Mark Chinook from Space. Mark's a massive connector. Nelson's a connector. All these people want to keep entertainers, actors, singers, comedians connected, so we can kind of grow and keep this town going.
Right.
Yes, and that's one part of my passion is to celebrate the old Vegas, but also embrace the new Vegas, right?
Right.
Which is, I think we all love the Rat Pack era. And I'll tell you that Pat bought his house here in 1970, over there in Sierra Vista Ranchos, where a lot of the performers lived. Rubber Goulet's wife still lives over there. Jerry Vale, many people, and Jackie Leonard's wife still lives over there. He was so funny.
He was so funny.
Yeah, and Pat talked about him a lot. But Pat loved that neighborhood. But he was a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah.
So he always had a place in New York, and he worked there a lot on the East Coast.
Oh,
so
yeah.
he could go back and forth. But he lived here for 35 years until his wife died in 2005. But when I told him, I said, Pat, I got to get out of New York. I don't know what you're doing, but I got to go to Vegas. And I just picked the place because of so much entertainment. And as a producer, I knew that there were projects that I could probably get involved with here, but I love the weather here, and I just couldn't take, after 21 years of New York, the weather. But I do love it, and but I love Vegas, and it's a fascinating town. I've always said that.
And I almost feel, and you're a New Yorker, and I lived in New York for years. Doesn't it feel like the best of New York is here?
Yes,
like the
true.
best food, the best shows, fashion, everything is here. It's obviously on a much smaller scale, but it's also incredibly accessible. What I always say about Las Vegas is it's flat, where New York is so stratified, where you can go to an event and you'll see the governor, and you'll see a very famous movie star, and you'll see me, and you'll be like, why is he here? So how did Di Domenico get in here? But that's the beauty of this town. Like, everybody kind of interacts with each other, and it kind of elevates the whole place.
Well, besides this town, though, you've done a lot of television. So tell us a little bit about some of your impersonations. And there are quite a few good ones. But the best one, I got to tell you, I was floored. And I got to mention the pickleball. And I got to mention the Donald Trump action figure behind bars. Those are two that really stuck out with me when I went into the rabbit hole over the last 2 days.
On my social media. So obviously I've been doing impressions since I was 5 years old for my neighbors, and I was watching Ed Sullivan. I remember seeing John Biner and all the impressionists, but John Biner and David Fry, for some reason, I just thought they were just so hilarious. And David Fry did political stuff, and Biner did Ed Sullivan, and I wanted to do everything. So I wanted to be an actor, comedian, impersonator, impressionist. I wanted to make movies. And, over time, as you get older, and I graduated college from the Poconos, East Stroudsburg, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I did stand-up for a while. And then I was pursuing an acting career in New York, and I was getting work. But I would get calls for my impersonations because they were pretty established, and very few people did what I was doing. And I was doing a play, Tony and Tina's Wedding, out of New York. We went to Philly, and then we went to Atlantic City at Trump Plaza. So in 1990, I got to meet Trump, and I was always interested in him because when you lived in New York in the late 80s, you could not avoid Trump. He was on all the papers and everything. Yeah. And then when I met him, he was like, how are you? Nice to meet you. And I met him again because I did his 55th birthday party. His Austin Powers, baby, yeah. So I did a bit with him on stage. And then he was kind of always in my head because if you notice, all of my characters are big. Like Dr. Phil, what were you thinking? I like big personalities. You can kind of get your comedy meat hooks into. And I'd always been like playing around with Trump's voice, and I would watch interviews. And then 2004, The Apprentice came along, and I was like, I gotta crack this voice. I have to. And I started working on his voice, and then 2004, 2005, I was starting to doing voiceovers, and I thought, you know what? Time to go to Bob Kelly. Bob Kelly did all the wigs and makeup for SNL before he passed away, and all the Broadway shows.
Wow.
And I went to him and I said, Bob, can you build me a wig? And it was like insane amount of money, but he
It's a good one.
yeah, it's a good. They're amazing. They're like $5,000. But he made me a wig, and that wig was actually modeled on the wig that Trump's body double used from the Visa commercial. Do you remember the Visa commercial? Trump's on top of the Chrysler Building and it blows out of his hands. He
I
goes into
remember
a dump.
that.
That wig, yeah. So I was all these weird connections. Meeting him, doing his 55th birthday, the wig for the commercial, and then I was doing them a lot. I that whole 10 years The Apprentice was on, and I was doing commercials, and I appeared in a movie, and I was doing voiceovers, and then he announced in 2015, and if you'd probably gone on to Google at that time, in its early stages, if you put in Donald Trump impersonator, I was probably one of the few people in the country. So I was like in the right place at the right time. Right immediately after he announced, I got picked up by Fox News. I did Red Eye because my friend Tom Shalhoub had just become the host. So I did 50 appearances on that. 50 appearances on that. And then Conan picked me up. I did 52 appearances on his show, his live show that he does at Comic-Con. Then Chelsea Handler picked me up, and then James Corden picked me up. And all these things started happening. And going back to that doll that you mentioned, I would be constantly sent stuff. And people say, can you promote this? Can you promote this? So that's what I was doing with the doll. I was promoting the doll, you know what I mean? Because it was the greatest doll in the history of dolls.
And it was Trump behind bars.
Trump behind bars. It was when all the indictments came down. Yeah. So it was hilarious.
It was a Trump action figure.
It was, and what was happening was it was a Trump action figure in the orange jumpsuit in behind bars. And what happened was I was shooting in Atlanta a whole thing where it was a thing for a comedy bit when all the cases were happening, and I was in a prison cell. So I said to the producers, do you mind? I knew I was going to be in a prison cell. I obviously read the script. So I brought that doll along. So I shot it in the cell and I don't know if you noticed, but there was a golden toilet in the background.
Oh, I missed that. I have to go back and look.
But I did a movie in 2008 called Meet the Spartans as
that.
Trump. Yeah. And it was so much fun. It was great getting picked up for all this stuff. And then like right before COVID, I flew to New York and I did an episode of Christine Baranski's show called The Good Fight. And I was on that.
She's great.
Oh, she's
Wow.
amazing. I was so honored. I even brought her a gift, and the producers let me sit down with
That's
her for a
amazing you
couple
got
of
to do
minutes.
that.
Yeah, I've gotten to meet so many people and do so many amazing things because of these impressions and characters, and obviously, so much of this is being in the right place at the right time. And I happened to be doing Trump long before anybody else, so I had built out this runway. So if you do a search, I was the guy who came up. But like anything else, there's so much competition now. But it's been incredible. It's been really
Well, you've
amazing.
really perfected him. I'll tell you that.
Right, and I've tried to age the voice as he's gotten older, and and you'll appreciate this. Pat's from Brooklyn, but when he announced in 2015, I always try to update all impressions and keep them really tight. And I knew I'd be doing a lot more of him. And I thought, you know what, let me go back to everything I was trained to do. And I thought, who does Trump sound like? And, he's from Queens. And I thought, does he sound like anybody else? Because you always want to build an impression on other impressions.
Sure.
It gives you like a structure. And I thought, who does Trump sound like? And I'm a big fan of Groucho. And to me, he has a very musical quality to his voice. Because Groucho is always like, hello, I must be going. I came to say I cannot stay. I must be going. And if you listen to Trump, there's that great musicality to his voice. Because he goes up and he goes down. And then I was thinking, who else is from Queens? And I was like, who else is from Queens? Like, who talks like Trump? Is there anyone? And I thought, oh, wait a minute. Christopher Walken, who's from Queens, has that same staccato style. So if you listen closely, it becomes Trump. You know, because the worst thing that could happen to an impression is you lose the impression, like right in the middle of a bit.
Yeah.
So I always kind of like lock it down with some other voices.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny because I think what you're talking about is having a rhythm, right?
Right.
Because
totally.
Milton Berle saw Pat early on in his career, and he said, Pat, you're good, but you got to get a rhythm. And I remember Pat always saying that. But Milton Berle told him that, and he learned that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it's about having a rhythm. And you do a lot of different, you really have nailed a lot of different impressions, like Austin Powers, right?
Love Mike Myers.
Guy Fieri.
Oh, Guy Fieri, baby.
Guy
Little
Fieri.
piece of taco grease, baby. I'm driving the bus to Flavortown, man.
I love
Another
that guy.
big character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta love him. He's so real, you know.
Oh, he's such
he's
a
so
great.
Italian.
I was like, thank God. You know, when he came along, I was like, thank God, thank you, God. Because, you know, as we move on in time, you know, like I had said, you know, I saw Pat many, many times on Mike Douglas, and you know, we're from a time when it was 3 networks and 2 UHF channels, and that was coast to coast. And I always said my cultural history goes back to the turn of the century. Huge Charlie Chaplin fan, Buster Keaton, Harold
Buster
Lloyd,
Keaton was amazing.
all those people.
Yeah.
And then the old movies and the old entertainers and everything. Unfortunately, in our country now, our cultural history goes back 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's such a shame.
Well, we got to do what we can to keep it going.
Yes,
And
and that's the beauty of Las Vegas, the
Yeah,
tradition here.
right. And that's what we got to keep doing. And I got to tell you, if you can believe it, we're already out of time. But people can follow you on Instagram at the Johnny
D Show.
The Johnny D Show.
Yeah, and if you want to see a lot of the Trump stuff,
It's on,
TikTok.
and Facebook. Your
Yeah, and
Facebook
Facebook.
page. They can follow
Yeah.
you there.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Listen, we can talk all day after.
Oh, totally.
Forget about it. I mean, we could talk all day. And we probably will continue when we finish here. But anyway, come back to the show sometime,
Oh,
please.
absolutely. And I'll bring those photos we
yeah,
talked about.
Yeah, we'll bring some
Yeah.
photos and any kind of props or anything.
Yeah. Oh, no, I got a ton of stuff.
No,
we
I'm
could just
sure.
sit here for an hour and just go over
No,
props.
You're a trip, and I love your fiance, Michelle. She's lovely.
Oh,
you guys
she's
are really
awesome.
nice people.
She's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
very lucky.
Well, I appreciate you coming today, but come back. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Legends and Laughs, and my Instagram at Emily's Las Vegas. We'll see you next time.